Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Mosaic podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of meeting my guest along with you. I met him through a podcast Facebook group that has people that want to be on podcasts and people that have podcasts. It's a fabulous meetup place. And sometimes the meets are good, sometimes they're not. I think it's going to be really good, this one. I get a really good feeling for this man. We've had a very short time to talk, but we have no idea what's going to happen. And that's the way I love going into it. For those of you who have watched us and listened to us over the course of I think we're on like 106, almost 106, no, 65 episodes, not 165. 65 episodes now, you know that amazing things have happened in this podcast because we're real, we're honest, we're right there for you. And so what I want to do is just introduce Jeffery to you. I'm going to do the best with the introduction that I can, but you know me, I'm not a big bio guy. So let's see what comes of this, okay?
It's all good.
My guest today is Jeffery Davis. He lived the life that he thought everybody wanted him to live. He owned property in one of the most prestigious areas in San Francisco. He worked in media sales at Newsweek, The New Yorker. He's been with several startups and was professionally invested in a business that had nothing to do with his passion until he couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't pretend anymore. He was out of touch with what he was feeling and unable to recognize even the feelings that he was having. And although he was able to attract wonderful people into his life as partners, he had no idea how to be a wonderful partner and how to create a fulfilling relationship. I think it's fair to say he was a little bit disconnected from the life that he wanted to live. And through his own learnings, through this own process, he's created a practical process for people to follow to deep dive into what's been stopping them from from living and having the life that they want to live, the one that lights their heart on fire and the one that gets them out of their head. And he's created tools to powerfully create for people lives that they dream of living. So if you want a life that's full of joy, that has a fire in your belly, he wants you to know it's possible because it was possible for him. He knows it's possible for you. So to learn more about him, we're going to invite you to go to his website. It's www.jeffreydaviscoach.com. Don't worry about capturing it. It's going to be in the show notes. You don't have to write it down now. And we have the horse in front of us. So you don't go spending your time. We can hear it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak, right now. Jeffery, welcome to the Mosaic podcast. What a treat to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be part of this. I love what you're doing, and I get the same feeling that this is going to be really fun. So I love the approach that you want to take here. So look forward to it.
Yeah. Fabulous. So normally I start out in a totally different way, but I'm so intoxicated by the words that you wrote about living a perfect life that everybody else wanted you to live. And you didn't say perfect, but you had all the accoutrements. You had the nice place to live. You were working with good top name companies. You were doing everything right according to other people.
Right.
When was that moment for you that you realized that wasn't the life that you wanted to live? Did you know right from the start, or did it just come at you at a certain point?
There were bits. I mean, like most things that show up in life, sometimes it shows up as a whisper, and then it shows up a little louder, and then it's like, right? So, somewhere in before the full knockout, maybe a moment or maybe a big hit and I got back up. But, there were a couple different moments. There was one moment where I just, in the weirdest way, I just got I realized I was bored. I realized that I was bored with me and the life that I had created and who I had become. There just didn't seem like there was enough depth, and I didn't know what that meant. And I remember that I was I would say meditating, but I didn't meditate at that time, but I was, let's just call it deep thinking or
Right.
ruminating.
Yeah.
And I just had this epiphany that maybe I had things upside down. So I noticed that I was living my life in my head. And so I had things quote unquote figured out, and I had them figured out really well. Like in conversation or in an event or an experience, I could tell which direction things were going. I could participate. There was a flow. There was a creation of opportunities and things like that in it. But it just didn't have a juicy creation. It had more of a push, more of a manipulation, more of a goal in mind. And I even looked at, the business that I was doing. It was like the conversations that I was having were business oriented. And so basically the conversations were about, I want something, even though they were great people, they were friends, but they were, that was the world that this had become. And my thought was, maybe I have it upside down. Maybe the answer is not to live in my head. Maybe the answer is to live in my heart. And so maybe the heart, at this point in time, I'm in corporate America and I'm working, at major companies. I'm thinking maybe my heart is my CEO and my head is the personal assistant. So that when my heart says, let's go to Italy, my head says, okay, let me check out the flights. Let me book the things. Let me take care of the details, right? My heart says, do something. And my head figures out how to do it, right?
As opposed to how you were living before, which was, explain that part of it for us.
Which was following something that somebody had told me to do, or doing something that seemed like everybody else was doing it, or that something that I had seen externally that I wanted, or I was following a path. Oh, in order to get this, you must do this, right? So I was just doing that, and I was, navigating it and navigating it quite well. And when you live in your head and you're in business, the world rewards you with, success, right?
Yeah.
There can be a lot of success living in your head.
Yeah.
But if there's something else there, you can realize that there's ultimately nothing else there when you're just living in your head. You're really disconnected from the most important part of you, and on some level, it's the most difficult journey anybody can make, which is that 8 inches between your head and your heart.
Yeah.
It's the longest journey you can ever take.
Yeah. Yeah. A standard, so many people say that, and yet doing it shows you why so many people say it. So where was your heart all the time that you were living in your head? I guess that's the question. That, like, I understand you beautifully characterized making your head the assistant of your heart.
Yeah.
But when your head was the CEO, what place did your heart play? Was it an assistant? Was it even there? Was it overridden? Was it where did that play?
Right. So the interesting thing is your heart's never going to be the loudest voice in the room. So it's very easy to let the bossy head, be the loudest voice in the room, and the heart's going to be, going to just hold space for that. That's what the heart does. And so, my heart was, I wasn't completely disconnected from my heart, but I wasn't tapped into it as a place of where I'm living. At this point in time, my purpose is to leave a legacy of love at whatever point in time, from now until the moment that I leave this rock before I come back, or whatever that next level is. That's what I'm here to do, is leave a legacy of love. And when you bring love into the world, you bring peace, joy, connection, and creativity. So that comes with it as part of the package.
So I love it, and excuse me for jumping in, because I just want to.
Sure.
I hear the people in the audience talking. At least I hope they're talking, and I hope I'm hearing. One of the big things that I speak about with people, and it's funny that I speak about it, because it's the art of listening. Because we've really forgotten so much how to listen to each other, but even how to listen to ourselves.
Right.
So what I would love to do, because you seem very articulate and you seem very clear now in the transition from those 8 inches from head to heart.
Right.
How did you, for people who are living in their head right now and have a sense that they would like their head to become the assistant of their heart,
Mm.
how did you first hear the whisper when the room was so loud, full of yelling and noise?
Mm.
What was the practice, or what were the things that you did to quiet the CEO of the mind so that the whisper of the heart could be heard?
Fascinating question. So, um, I think because there were so many things that contributed to it. Like there was a process that I
Yeah.
discovered after going through it. I was like, oh, this is how this works, but I just kind of bounced into it and learned it. And then, in the first place is that you have to have a clear connection to the heart. And so that means that you have to heal the places where there's blocks so that you can get that connection, so that you
Okay,
know that you're.
go. I'm sorry. I love you as a brother, and you and I are familiar with some of these terrains and some of these trails we're
uh
walking. Okay,
Sure.
but I'm wanting to assume that not everybody is where you and I are. When you
Perfect.
say you have to clear those blocks, where you have to open up those pathways, I can see some people saying, "What the hell is he talking about? Like, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
how do I what pathways? Where do I do that? How do I go about doing that? What do I do to do that?" And
Sure.
I really want you to go, because I think you have done the process and you're
Yeah.
teaching the process. I really want you to give like some of those keys, because I really want people to say, boy, I can trust myself to this guy to
Right.
do this
Yeah.
process with him.
So I would say um, Hmm. So the process involved a couple of things. First is the healing of my heart, which meant that any resentments that I had, I needed to address, because the resentments occur in me. That's something that I'm holding. That's an anger at somebody else. So does somebody else feel it? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Maybe they feel my behavior. Maybe they feel my energy. Maybe they feel the loss of connection, whatever that is. But the heat, the anger, the adrenaline, the cortisol, all that stuff, that resides in me. That's my experience. And so that's not a good experience, both on a physical level, a mental level, an emotional level, and a spiritual level, that I'm putting myself through.
Right.
And that's an impact on my heart. So what I need to do is to get to a place of forgiveness for whatever it is I'm not forgiving them for. I'm resenting it. I'm holding it.
Yeah.
And then the key, really important part that a lot of people miss, that's super important in this, is I need to forgive myself.
Beautiful.
Right? Because
Beautiful.
everything has two pieces, right?
Right.
I sure, I forgive you for doing that, but there's also a piece of me that blames myself for allowing you to do that,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. So I need to clear that channel.
Love
So
it.
that's one thing.
So let me stay with me, and tell me if I'm pushing you too hard. But I
Yeah.
really I like it's so beautiful to be able to have a conversation with someone where we can jump right into the water and say, here is what's going on.
Cool.
I know so many people who want to do that.
Mm.
I know so many people who have resentment and anger, and look at the world we live in today. Everybody is fighting everybody, even with COVID-19. We're in the middle of COVID-19, right? Which is a pause in life. And one of the
Right.
beautiful things for me about COVID-19 is this pause is making us stop yelling, stop being involved. And
Right.
for a little while, it's made us stop. Now I'm noticing the yelling is starting up again in San Diego, where I live. This is April 19th. People have been secluded for like a little over a month. And now they're out on the streets protesting. We want to get out. We want to do this. I mean, going against there's a lockdown. We're not supposed to be out. And
Right.
so whether you agree with it or not, I'm just watching the way people are responding to this fact that they don't know themselves enough to be comfortable sitting in themselves.
Right.
And they're scared to go inside. They're scared to go and do. They're scared because of all the hurts that they've had going into their heart. They don't want to lead with their heart now because they're scared to death they're going to get hurt again. So for
Yeah.
you, who, like, on one level, it sounds beautiful. Forgive each other for, like, and it's so true, right? You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
easy, and everything about this is so easy or simple, but it's just not easy. How do you get to that place where you say to yourself, I'm so fed up with who I am right now that even if I get hurt again, it's better than the hurt that I experienced by being shut down. And I say we're siloed. So
Mm.
even when we meet each other, all that happens is my silo meets your silo. We don't actually interact,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I know what I say to people, but this is, I want them to get another perspective. What do you say to people that will allow them to drop their silo and not be scared of the pain? Like, I'm willing to forgive you, and I think people will, even when they get to that point, but then it's so scary for them because they feel like this guy could hurt me again, or this person could hurt me, and they have a history of being hurt, and so they believe in the history more than the reality of the moment, and they're scared it's going to
Mm.
happen again.
Right.
You with me?
Yeah. So pain is real. And the thing about physical pain is you can feel it, or emotional pain is you can feel it physically, right? So it's intense. And when you feel like, or you believe that somebody has a power over you and they can hurt you by their actions or their emotions, and that they do that to you, it does two things. One is it does hurt, and then two is you have disempowered yourself. You've given them all the power to hurt you, not, you know, okay, as opposed to, yeah, I mean, I that was disappointing, or that was, I feel some sadness because you said that, or I'm noticing I've got some anger because that happened, or whatever it is, as opposed to I am this and you did that, and it comes back to really having a relationship with yourself in such a way that you are okay with the fact that you're alive, you have emotions, we're interacting with people, and it's a process. And sometimes, as you were saying, our bubbles bump up against each other, and we may, like, have their spark may fly. And from that spark, when you have a breakdown, if you have two people who, are on relatively good ground, or they want to connect, you can get that a breakdown can lead to a breakthrough that actually creates more intimacy.
Yeah.
And the place to really get that is with your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, you're going to be looking to other people to, to be surrogates for that good relationship that you are lacking for yourself. You're going to be looking to them to be a surrogate of giving you praise that you're not giving to yourself, or the surrogate of loving you when you're not loving yourself. And when they don't do that, you're like, well, I don't have love in here and you're not giving it to me, so that's painful.
Right. Right.
As opposed to, I love myself, I'm good, I'm whole, complete, and perfect. And it's okay if you act that way. I don't really appreciate it. Or it's, you did that, and that's, I've got a boundary there. We're clear on that, so that this isn't going to work. Or, I just express my feelings, and also knowing that we're humans. So that bump and that spark will happen in any powerful, beautiful relationship that you have. And that's part
Beautiful.
of growth.
Let me lob something over the net to you.
Okay.
And I'm really interested in how you perceive it. Okay. I wrote a book called The Mosaic. And The Mosaic's a story about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell him they're in a place called heaven. So he sets out that moment to find the place called heaven. But the people that he meets along the way are not the rabbis and the ministers and the shamans and the priests and the swamis and the gurus and all that stuff.
Right.
They're the trash man, the juice man, the gardener, the homeless guy, the street artist, common ordinary people.
People.
People, just
Yeah.
regular people.
Yeah.
The one that's coming to me right now in this conversation, because they're alive and living in me, they're archetypes that sort of live in me, is the gardener.
Mm.
And when Mo discovers, Mo's the kind of name of the character, when Mo discovers this garden, he discovers it in the evening from a village away. But the aroma of the flowers is so strong that it carries through the air. And he thinks, should I walk there now when it's dark, or should I go there in the morning when I can see it? And he chooses to wake up early in the morning and get there so that when he arrives, he sees it in its full bloom.
Mm.
And he gets there and he sits there and he says, this is the most beautiful garden I've ever seen. And he's been to a lot of places. He's seen a lot of gardens, but there's something about this garden that just intoxicates him.
Mm.
And it's so strong that he actually has to close his eyes and take it in without the visual, because it's almost too overwhelming to him to see how much beauty is here. So he experiences it with the rest of his senses.
Mm.
And his eyes aren't closed 2 minutes when he feels his presence right in front of his face. And he thinks, that's weird. And he opens his eyes and he sees a man standing in front of him.
Mm.
And he looks at him and he says, who are you? And he says, I'm the gardener. I know who I am. Who are you?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I just smelt this garden from a village away and I had to come and see it. This is the most beautiful garden. What have you done to make this garden so beautiful? And the gardener says, well, anybody with sense of color can know that you put these flowers together with these, and you put the small flowers in front of the big flowers, and anybody would know that. And you put certain types of flowers with other types. Every people know that. He said, no, everybody knows that, but this garden's something special. And the gardener looks at him, and here's the point, long story to say a small point. The gardener looks at him and says, do you have a garden, Mo? And he said, yeah, I've gardened once in a while. And he said, when you weed, what do you do? And he said, well, I try and pull out the weeds. And he says, when you get that big clump of weeds that when you pull it out, it breaks in your hand. And you know you haven't gotten it out of the ground, but it's broken at your hand at earth level. What do you do? And Mo says, well, normally I'm too busy with other things. I have a whole garden to weed. And so I cut it and level it off so it looks good. But then, so the gardener says, maybe that's why you think this garden's beautiful. Because I'm a gardener. When I get to a clump like that, I have nothing else to do but make this garden beautiful. So I dig down and I take the roots out. Because when your garden has weeds in it, every time someone says something that comes close to saying you have a weed there, you're going to respond defending yourself. Because you're going to say, well, what are you? I'm just busy. I can't take out all the weeds. But when you have no weeds in your garden, nothing anybody can say will make you lose your cool.
Right.
So
for sure,
part of the process for me is to invite people to call on the gardener, to have him come deep into their soul of their garden and help them remove these weeds, to create these thoughts, to create these situations. Because if you just cut off the weed at the top, you haven't solved the problem. So I lob that over to you. How does that fit with you? What sense do you get from that?
I think it's a beautiful analogy of the whole process. It is really about gardening. And it is about removing the stuff that does not serve what you are trying to grow.
Yeah.
And what will bear fruit and nourish you. Or, whether that's just through its beauty or whatever that is. But, you have an intention and you have an experience that you want to have. And then you have something that is not part of that. So, and is literally may choke the life or may inhibit the ability for that intention to come true. So you need to do the weeding at the root level
Yeah.
and really get down to it. And, that can involve, okay, so if I have, for me,
Totally.
if I have resentments and things like that, clean those up. But then what's deeper? Oh, I should probably work on my family, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of relationship do I want to have, and how do I want to create that? Oh, let's go deeper. Who am I? Who am I? Now there's a question that'll give you some homework to do.
Yeah.
Like, who am I? Not I'm a plumber,
Right.
because at this point in time in our cultural history, most people may not identify themselves as what they do, and that's not really. And I mean, that's an identity, but that's not who you are. I mean,
Yeah.
you are a spirit, a being. What are you here to? Who are you, and what are you here to do? And what I got, was that I'm here for love. I'm here to be a voice of love. And what was fascinating, the real root of all of this,
Hmm.
was I was in meditation, and it was so fascinating. It was like watching Family Feud. When I was looking at in my mind's eye, I was looking at my value set, and it was freedom, and then down at number 3 or number 4 was connection. It was still in there, it was
Right.
definitely strong,
Right.
but it was not number 1. And I was like, I think it's time to change this. I'm not, because I believe intuitively, I'm starting to feel that the life that I want, the depth, the intimacy, and everything else, and the abundance is in that.
Hmm.
So much like Family Feud, I took that and I saw it move up to the top. And the first thing that I felt when I moved the value of connection to number 1 for me, the first thing that I felt was loneliness.
Wow.
Because now all of a sudden my attention was on connection, and it wasn't my top priority. And so I was sensing the distance between number 1 and number 3. Right? Freedom was all over the place,
Yeah.
but number 1 and number 3. So it was like, that was for me the root. And then from there, that becomes your values are really the root, the prism through which you look at life, the portal through which you create life, your life,
Yeah.
and the experience that you have. And so, it literally became, after that, it became, okay, so what do I need to change? How do I need to behave every moment? How do I create a life that serves that value that I am now committed to doing? And
I love
that changed conversations, that
Yeah.
changed my commitment to relationships, that changed how I interacted with my parent. It changed everything.
Yeah. I love that, because I think Wayne Dyer was the one that said it. He was a buddy of mine from when I was at Hay House.
Mm,
I think the way he said it was, when you change the way you look at the world you look at changes.
totally.
And so just a beautiful thing like that of allowing your focus to move from freedom, which freedom probably most people would assume is a fairly independent act, even though it doesn't have to be,
Mm,
to an act of connection, which is they say, when you want to go fast, go alone. When you want to go far, go together. Right?
right.
It's sort of, and I'm as you were talking, something came to mind, and it's not that I know this. I want to talk about it with you,
Sure.
because it's a fabulous conversation, and I'm just enjoying having it with you. One of the beautiful things to me about the image of a mosaic, and pardon me for being so narcissistic of talking about it, it's not even what I talk about in my book. It's just, but the image of a mosaic is that when we connect pieces, it's not like we have to replace one piece or give prominence to one piece over another. We allow the freedom to connect us into a free connection. I don't know. I mean, I'm stumbling with my words, but it feels right to me that the harmonious feeling of the mosaic of our life, which is made up of all of our core values,
Mm,
when they resonate with each other and don't oppose one another, because most of the time we get to a situation where we say, well, this is who I used to be, now I'm choosing to be this, and we leave a little bit of that behind. But in the mosaic, it's all still connected.
Sure.
So how do we infuse, and this is a question, it's not, I mean, I don't know it if it's true or not.
Sure.
Can you see a possibility where we infuse all the pieces of ourselves into the mosaic of who we are, so that freedom and connection are not different, but almost are the same? Because you still have a love for freedom, even though you have a
Yeah.
love of connection, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's a fascinating question and interesting timing too, because for the last 10 years, I haven't searched for it, but like a word or a phrase has dropped into my awareness that I spend time with over the course of the year. And I learn so much about myself. And it's over the course of the year, because first it becomes something that, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. And then it's like, I start to incorporate it, and then it becomes a thing inside of me, it
Yeah.
becomes integrated, right, over practice and over thought and everything else. And so I this last year in 2019, I was working with surrender,
Yeah.
and this is the first time that the word showed up on at the beginning of the year. It actually was on the 31st for 2020 was freedom. So and within relationship, in connection, you can find freedom with boundaries, because then you understand how to interact. And, boundaries that's not a cage. That's just a process, an intention, and a structure.
Cool. You had me, because I was about, as you said, freedom with boundary. Dive into that a little,
Uh-huh.
because again, what we want to do is blow some of the preconceived notions in people's minds. When
Yeah.
people think of freedom, they probably think of a boundaryless place. If I said that
Mm-hmm.
right, right?
Right.
So dive into what freedom with boundaries means.
Well, there's a couple things. One is, I think most people have avoided a level of freedom in their lives, because true freedom means that you are fully responsible for yourself,
Hmm.
and so when you do that, then you have the opportunity and the personal power to make a choice that maybe nobody else does, or make a choice that maybe nobody else would consider, or maybe even nobody else supports. Then I'm not saying it's a bad choice, but it's
Right.
your choice,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
So that's a level of freedom. And then and most people, like, don't expand into that level of freedom.
Yeah.
So within a relationship, when you have boundaries, you have a structure that, again, is not a cage. It's just like, okay, so then you start to understand how to relate to this other person. And that gives you that just provides a direction, and it creates a flow, right? So for instance, it's almost as if you've got this lake, and then all of a sudden you just create a structure for it to go down, and then there's the force of all of that water going through this channel. And so it doesn't make it smaller, it actually just makes it more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So the boundaries of the banks actually make the energy more powerful, more potent, and it provides you an opportunity to connect in a more meaningful way.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, and I think, this is just a subset of what you're saying also, it
Yeah.
also allows the energy, which is unlimited, to be focused.
Mm.
And with that
Yes.
focused energy, it creates a power of creation, to create something that it isn't binding in any way, but
Right.
just allows you to channel that energy in a focused direction towards something that you want to achieve.
Right.
Does that make sense to you? Is
Yeah.
that
So
what
for
you're saying?
instance, so if we went to 12 people and we said, okay, you have a boundary, and here's your boundary. here's a tapestry, and here's some paint, and here's some brushes. You can use them, not use them, whatever, but this is your boundary. You have to put whatever it is on this tapestry. You would be surprised, you'd get 12 totally different creations.
Completely.
But you have a boundary within that. So it's the same thing energetically. I mean, just because you have a boundary, it doesn't mean creativity is shut down. It just means you have a place for it.
So I love it. Let's recycle now. Let's come back to how this love, freedom with boundaries comes back to this place where people have how does that help people, which I believe it does? How does that help people release their fear of being hurt again in a relationship that they walk into with their heart? I remember my wife does energy healings and said her slogan is trust in the power of your heart. And she is beautiful. And the work she does is absolutely magnificent. Wow. But she was talking to a woman very much in her head. And she said, I can't trust in the power of my heart. Every time I do that, it hurt. I get thrown on my butt, because I get hurt by every time I do that. So it isn't that somebody has power over her in her own head. Maybe they do. It's that she's already made up it's happened. It's happened. It's going to happen again. That's what happens when I do this. When I do this, this is what happens. And so how would this concept of having freedom with boundaries help to focus that situation through? I don't even know if it works, but it's just coming to me, this connection's coming to me of our conversation, and would it make sense? Does that make any sense to you?
So are you asking, I feel like there's a couple questions in there. I'm not totally clear on which one. So are you asking like how she could use that as a tool when she's in relationship or before she's in relationship, or?
I'm asking for people who have these sort of feelings of I am just scared of getting hurt, because we live in when I look at the world today, what I see is so many beautiful people that have no idea how much power they have within themselves if they would only get to know themselves, but they're scared to get to know themselves. Just like they're scared to give their heart to somebody else, they're scared to give their heart to themselves because they're scared of what will happen when they do that. So I'm wondering, in this discovery process with you, through this idea of being completely free and using the boundaries of freedom to channel or to focus on a goal, how that might help them to get to know themselves, get to know another person, get to know anybody. Or if it's even relevant. I'm just putting pieces together of conversation, of sentences and thoughts, right?
Yeah. So how could you use freedom and boundaries in that? So if
to overcome fear.
Yeah. So that I would use that in relationship to myself as a tool. And what I would say is, I have the freedom to choose to be single. I've been celibate before. I can choose to be in relationship. So I have freedom. And the boundaries that I would put around that is that I am going to, I've done this before, so I'm going to approach a relationship from a slower aspect and from a spiritual aspect and an emotional aspect. And then, the physical aspect can come as it comes, no matter what the chemistry is and everything else. I'm going to create a boundary for myself on how I'm going to interact and who I'm going to interact with, so that it allows me to feel like I have a safe container to be totally free
Right.
with my heart, with myself, and to know that I've got my back, and to know that, I have a structure that, may not be perfect, because nobody's going to get through this ride alive, so to speak. Nobody's going to get through a relationship without getting hurt,
Right.
ever. It doesn't mean that person is going to intentionally hurt you, but it's just not going to happen. It's part of, humans interacting, and that spark and everything else. So knowing first and foremost that you have your heart, and that it's okay, should something not work out, right? If you've decided, oh, okay, I'm in a fixed mindset, and I'm going to protect my heart in this box, and I'm never going to be in another relationship. I mean, that's not boundaries. That's not freedom. That's I'm opting out.
Yeah. I call it
And
siloing.
yeah,
It's just, right.
yeah, and the other thing is, there is a gift in those heartbreaks.
Yeah.
I have learned something from every single heartbreak. After every single one, I've also felt more capacity to love. I've also, after my divorce a couple years ago, I just felt that I decided I was going to be celibate for a while. And I just felt so much love drop deeply into me,
Yeah.
that that amount of time that I decided to be celibate extended significantly, because I was like, wow, I am in love with myself.
Totally.
And it's amazing, because I'm just really discovering on such a deep level, I don't even understand how to explain it, like who I am, and appreciating that.
Yeah.
And showing up for that, and knowing that I've got that. I can hold it. I can hold that container, and by holding all of that, whatever's going on in me, I can show up for anybody in whatever case they're in.
Yeah. Love that. I was a monk for 10 years, so I know that place.
Mm.
And I love that place. And so, surprising, but another character is coming. Do you mind if I share him with you?
Yeah, totally. This is great.
Okay. So as we were speaking, as even I was formulating the question and lobbed it over the net, I saw my doubles partner come for this volley, which was the Trashman. And he's an interesting character, because in the book, Mo is just walking with nothing in his pockets, nothing on his back, on an immaculately clean street, and the trash truck pulls up and says, "Do you have any trash for me?" And he looks at him. Mo looks at him like, "What, are you crazy? I have nothing on me. I'm not carrying anything. The streets are." You're like, "What are you talking about?" He's just about to say, "What, are you crazy?" until he sees a little sparkle in the trash man's eyes, and he realizes the trash man isn't talking about physical trash. He's talking about emotional or spiritual trash, or all those things that are keeping him from being who he wants to be. And he asks him if he has anything that he wants to give him. And in our neighborhood, the trash man comes every Monday morning. And we put out all the things that we no longer want, whether they're, packaged products that we've gotten through, or chairs that we no longer need, or clothes that, whatever it is we don't want to donate, that's not good enough to donate, we put it in the trash, and the trash man comes and picks it up. I heard Thich Nhat Hanh, a beautiful Buddhist monk, talk about this practice called compassionate listening, and I realized he was talking about the trash man. And what I would like to bring to mind, and I would love to see your thoughts on this. For all those pains that we all have, like I have them as much as anybody else, all those fears that we have, call on the trash man, because the trash man's holding a container for you. And he's asking you to put everything that troubles you into this trash can. And you don't have to have them put it into the truck. If you don't want to give it up, just give it up for a minute and put it into the trash can. And even if you're in a situation where you're in a relationship where someone's yelling at you and saying, "Danny, don't you understand? You're the reason why I'm upset." This wouldn't be the moment for me to defend myself. This would be the moment for me to say, "Please just put all of it into this trash can. Tell me more." Tell me
Yeah.
what about what's going on that I'm doing. Put it all right in here.
Right.
And the compassionate part of that listening process is that I want you to experience for just even a moment what it feels like when you take all of that pain, all of that suffering, all that fear, and you empty it into something else. So it's no longer in you.
And so you have freedom.
And you have the freedom
Right.
to just live, not reactatory or reactive, or I'm making up words as we're talking, but that's okay, but without a reaction, but just that you're free to experience this new person, because so many times I found in my own life that perception and reality are the same. As long as it's my perception, my perceived reality makes the reality real, even though it's
Right.
not real. So even though you're being as nice to me as you could possibly be, my fear of what you could be to me will make your words and your actions appear different to me than they are. So for those people who are in pain, for those people who are in suffering, for those people who are having trouble, letting go,
Yeah.
call the trash man. He'll come to you now. He's your friend.
Mm.
I have a meditation. If anybody wants it, it's called the Trashman Meditation. Just put a note here, and it's about letting go of all that and putting it into the trash can.
Mm.
Tell me your thoughts.
Well, there's two things that popped up immediately. One was with the when you think it, then you start to create it.
Yeah.
Made me think of the woman that you were talking about in the conversation just a moment ago, where she's, thinking, I've gotten my heart broken over and over. If I do it again, I'll get my heart broken.
Right.
It's
Right.
like she's literally going to interact with that person in a way that may make them leave, because she's not going to fully engage. She may view what they say as, they're going to leave. So she may be triggered, and then she maybe, reaches in too much. Maybe she's jealous, whatever it is, right? Like that does
Yep.
create the way that she interacts with them.
Yep.
Like, you're
Yep.
going to leave, so I'm going to interact with you as if you're going to leave. And I mean, what else is he going to do?
Self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah. The second thing is, you were talking about letting go. And last year, I was working with surrender, but there's a great book on letting go by David Hawkins, who is an amazing doctor and a writer, and I'm sure you're aware of him. But
He's a
talks.
wild man. I met him in Arizona, and when I was working at Hay House, and
Uh,
I think I tested as a genius IQ when I was a kid,
mm,
but there was very little of what he said that I could understand, because
really?
he was Einsteinian almost in the way he presented things.
Hmm.
And I mean, it was fabulous. He blew my mind. But yeah, go ahead, speak of his.
Yeah, so he does a lot of work around levels of consciousness, and the one of the books that I read last year was Letting Go, and so he talks about the levels of consciousness and how you can use them as a healing modality to surrender or let go of something, so that you can up level your levels of consciousness, so you can let go of this in a particular way as a tool, so that you can elevate from shame to anger, which doesn't sound like a great trade-off, but actually shame is a sunken energy. It's the lowest energy and lowest level of
Yeah.
consciousness. That it's like quicksand. And anger is an active one. It's like the first one where you can start to use that energy to move up,
Yeah.
right? You can start to direct it. So, it was really fascinating. So yeah, I mean, letting go is the first step towards anything. And it's also a step towards freedom. Yeah.
So in other words, what Jeffrey's saying is, even though anger would not be a sought after quality that you would want to experience, if you're experiencing shame, anger is actually a step up. And if you can get
Yes.
yourself from shame to anger, you're actually making progress on a vibrational level, which would then allow you to go into the next phase, which would then, the way we see the world is so different than the way the world actually is,
Yes.
right?
And again, just to clarify, is super important that popped up when you said is that anger, it needs to be channeled. It's an energy, so it needs to be channeled in a particular direction that helps move you in a positive direction, right? As opposed to channeling that anger towards self-abuse,
Freedom
right?
with borders.
Yes, exactly. So
Right?
if you got
Again,
that, yeah, exactly.
I think that's the name of our podcast, Freedom with Freedom.
I love it. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's powerful.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time, and we're getting to that place where we unfortunately have to wind down. I love you, brother. I could talk to you
Yeah.
forever, and I hope this
Yeah,
will
you
be the
too.
beginning of many conversations.
I
We
look
have,
forward to it.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
For people who want to know about what you're doing, first of all, how do they find you? What is it of all the things that you do? How do they find you, and what would be the thing you would most want to take the freedom and focus it towards to help them live the life that they dream of living? What would the thing that you do be?
You mean a tool or technique
Yeah,
or?
yeah.
Yeah. So first, they can contact me through a website, jeffreydaviscoach.com, and it's Jeffrey, Jeffery. And the first thing that I would tell somebody to do is, well, actually, I would say two things. So first, start to check into your body. Like, and people could do this right now. Is there tension in your body? A lot of times it's in your shoulders. For me, it is. Or is there, and what's going on with your breath? Are you breathing in your belly, or are you breathing up in your upper register? If you're breathing in your upper register, because it could be because you have anxiety or fear, trepidation, or you could just be doing that habitually. And guess what? It actually creates fear, anxiety, and depression and things like that. So if you get the full breath, then you start to actually move energy, you start to move air, you start to move emotions. So as you move emotions through your body, as opposed to get them stuck, then you get freedom. Like when emotions get stuck in your body, it starts to manifest. So, because it's held, it's not released. You're not a yes to that emotion. You're a no to that emotion. So when that emotion gets stuck in your body, you don't get, oh, I've got a little yes in my neck. No, I got a little knot in my neck. It's not a yes, it's a not, right?
Yeah,
It's a stuck emotion because you're not happy with it.
yeah. I love that.
So yeah,
Most people spell that Knot, but we spell it right now Not, right? I got
exactly.
a knot, which is a no, right?
Yes. So I got a not listening to that emotion, not letting it go. So that's the first thing, tapping into your body and what's happening with your body. I would say that is super important. And then the second thing is start to listen to how you talk. What words are you using, and how are they creating your world, and how does it make you feel, and what kinds of reactions are you getting from other people based on the words that you choose? So for instance, are you using the word should a lot, have to, need to? I mean, like, how are you speaking that cuts out your freedom,
Mm.
that cuts out the life force in you, that cuts out the choice in you, and that victimizes you? So are you blaming or complaining, which means that you've abdicated your power to somebody else? I'm blaming you for how I feel. I'm complaining about this thing. Somebody once said something really interesting that changed my view of the flip side of complaining,
Mm.
which is the receiving of it. And I think it's a great quote, which is, a complaint is just a poorly worded request.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah. So it's like, they just didn't word it very well at all,
Yeah,
but they may just be telling you, could you do this thing?
yeah, yeah. I love that. And if we had more time, remind me when we talk under separate cover to tell you the story of my daughter,
I
because
will.
it's such a beautiful illustration of that. Um, Jeffrey, when you look out at the world, is it the world you always dreamed of handing over? I don't know if you have children or not, but if you don't have children, if you do have children, to your children, and if you don't, to future generations, is this the world you always dreamed you'd give over to future generations?
Um, That's an interesting question. There are so many. This is an amazing planet. This is an amazing time. This is an amazing experience. I am floored by my good fortune to be alive at this time with everybody that I'm encountering, and just so grateful for it. I I also feel like more and more people are waking up. That there are shifts in consciousness. I also feel, yeah. I mean, I there are things that um, there are definitely things that are happening that I wish were not happening to people.
Yeah.
I have a lot of compassion um, for A, what's going on, and B, just the world that we live in.
Yeah.
Right? There are things that are happening to people that are tragic and awful, and there's just no way around that. And it's I'd like to do more.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
For those people who are like you, or for those people who are awakening or part of the awakening or want to awaken more,
Mm.
who notice what a beautiful, exquisite world this is, and notice also at the same time how much suffering and pain and stuff is going on. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not saying it the way you said it. You said it probably more eloquently, but what would be one thing that you would offer to the aspiring, awakening people that they could do on a day-to-day basis? They could start right now, that would allow them to help tilt the world more towards a direction of one that we wouldn't even think about saying, I'm happy to hand this over to future generations, because this enhances the beauty that we all see in it.
Mm. The one thing, um, yeah, I mean, I think, as I said before, I'm here to leave a legacy of love. And the one thing that I think will help people get further towards that is practicing compassion,
Hmm.
compassionate listening, compassionate receiving, compassionate giving, compassion to yourself. Practicing compassion, it will change how you listen to somebody. It'll change who you are, how you behave, and literally, if you impact, you know, uh, people talk about, I want to change the world, I want to do this, and they, and that's, I get it, but I also understand that even if you are raising one person, you are changing the world. That one person, I was thinking about this the other day, that one person may be the person who invents something or does something, or they may be the person who saves that person's lives, or the person who changes it. I mean, it all is bound together. And so when you live a life with compassion, especially for yourself, then you can hold space for other people, and then we have a more safe world, and a more connected world. And then people start to step up for other people who are in pain or suffering, whether it's some of these groups on Facebook who are literally, what do you need? There's a couple groups on Facebook that are like, what do you need? And then they leave a list, and then the people buy it through Amazon and ship it to them, single mothers and all that stuff. It's like, it's beautiful.
Beautiful. I want to thank you for joining us, for giving us the most precious quantity of time that you could ever do, because you spent an hour plus with us, and I'm so honored for that, and I really want to thank you for that. If I could take just 1 minute to summarize some of my thoughts for the people that come by. One of the most beautiful things I got out of this conversation is how an absolute stranger and I can sit down and have a conversation that so resonates with me and so touches my spirit and so expands the way I think and so challenges some of my parameters around the life that I live and the thoughts that we come up with together and how there was, like, I don't know what you felt, but I challenged Jeffrey a few times and I lobbed some things over the net. Zero defensiveness, just an embrace of that. And just a kind, loving, warm heart that when you speak about it, it's one thing, but when you see it in action, it's completely another. And I, I want you to listen to this because there were nuggets in this podcast that don't get heard as you're riding in the car to work or, doing something else. Take some time and sit with it. Just listen to it. Better yet, take a minute and get to his website, www.jeffreydaviscoach.com. It'll be in the show notes. Here's one thing that he's closed by saying that just so touches me. I'm a writer. And one of the things that I did is I wrote a storybook for a hotel who wanted me to brand their hotel. It was the Andaz in Maui, and they asked me to write the story of their hotel. And I asked them, well, what is your story? They said, well, we don't have one. And so I asked them to send me their core values, and I would create a story based on why people come there, which is to fall in love. And I created characters from their core values and we created a love story. Well, it was fabulous. And it was such a beautiful book that they used to train people, to hire people, to put on the beds of people who stay there. But one of the beautiful things that happened is one of the characters was the guy every guy wants to be. He was the best huntsman. He was the best in the kayak. He was the smartest. He was the most charismatic. He was the one every woman wanted to be with. And I ended the chapter by saying, and every night he went home to another woman on the island because every woman on the island wanted to be with him. And they said, Danny, we understand what you're saying, but we can't have that be what we have at the hotel. This is our hotel branding message, right? And I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're so right. I changed 10 words to say, even though every night he could go home to any woman on the island, he couldn't wait to get home to the woman he longed to be with. Our thoughts become our words. Our words create our stories. And our stories create our life. And when Jeffrey said to you, watch your words, watch what you're thinking, I would invite you to go back even one more step. Watch your thoughts. But if you change your words, like Jeffrey's saying, your thoughts also have to change. Your life also has to change. So anywhere you want to approach that formula. But now is a moment to my personal plea to everybody is to find those places where we connect rather than where we're diverse. Instead of thinking about all the things that we don't share in common, find that one little tip where we share it in common. And let's bring this world together in a united world where we're no longer fighting over small things, but we're celebrating over the big things that we can do together when we come together. And the work Jeffrey's doing is so vital to that process happening. And I really encourage you to find him, seek him out, call him up, talk to him, work with him, do whatever it is that you feel to do with him. Because what he's doing is spectacular. Thank you again for the honor of coming onto the show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your heart, your knowledge, your being with us. It's really an honor.
Thank you so much. I really super enjoyed speaking with you and diving into this. I love what you're doing, and I love your approach to it. And I feel connected to you, brother. And I hope that people have gotten something out of this. If there's any way that I can help anybody, for the month of April, I am talking to one person for free each day, just to help people out while we're in this moment with different tools, or just somebody to listen to. So, I appreciate you.
Beautiful. Be that person. Get in line right now so you can have that opportunity. So again, thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, people, for showing up again, as you always do, to listen. If you like it, let people know you like it. Share it with your friends. Share it with people. Post a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to it. And again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the gift of you and for your time here with us. Have
Thank you.
safe, good days.
All right. Thank you.